I never thought I'd be thankful for a piece of jewelry, but that necklace, it saved my life. These were the words of Sarah, a recovering addict whose world was turned upside down by Melania Trump's donation. Today, we're unraveling the incredible stories of people like Sarah, ordinary individuals whose lives were forever changed by an extraordinary act of kindness. Get ready to see the true power of generosity in action. The attic was a treasure trove of forgotten memories, each box a time capsule waiting to be rediscovered. Melania Trump stood amidst the dusty relics, her fingers trailing over old photo albums and childhood mementos. She hadn't expected to find much when she decided to sort through these long-neglected possessions, but as she lifted the lid of a small, ornate box, her breath caught in her throat. There, nestled in faded velvet, lay a necklace that seemed to capture the very essence of elegance. The intricate design gleamed even in the dim light, each delicate curve telling a story of craftsmanship and history. Melania carefully lifted the piece, feeling its weight both physical and emotional in her hands. As she examined the necklace, memories flooded back. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice, warm and filled with wisdom, recounting tales of their family's journey. This necklace had been a silent witness to generations of triumphs and struggles, a constant thread weaving through the tapestry of their lives. Melania's fingers traced the contours of the pendant, her mind racing. The necklace was undoubtedly valuable, both in monetary terms and as a family heirloom. She found herself torn between the desire to keep this precious link to her past and an unexpected urge to share its beauty with the world. Time seemed to slow as she pondered her decision. The weight of the necklace in her hands grew heavier with each passing moment, as if imbued with the expectations of those who had worn it before. Melania closed her eyes, allowing the memories to wash over her once more. Suddenly, a long-forgotten conversation with her grandmother resurfaced. "True beauty," the older woman had said, her eyes twinkling, "is meant to be shared, not hidden away." In that moment, Melania knew what she had to do. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, she carefully placed the necklace back in its box. Her decision was made. She would donate this priceless heirloom to charity. As she sealed the box, a sense of peace washed over her. Little did she know that this simple act of generosity would set in motion a chain of events that would touch countless lives. The necklace, once hidden away in a dusty attic, was about to embark on a new journey. It would pass through many hands, each person adding their own chapter to its story. From the appraiser who would recognize its true value to the charity organizer who would be overwhelmed by the sudden influx of attention, this single piece of jewelry was destined to change lives in ways Melania could never have imagined. The charity's office hummed with activity, volunteers bustling about sorting donations and preparing care packages. Sarah, the director, sipped her lukewarm coffee as she scrolled through her inbox. Her eyes widened at an email that stood out. "Donation from Melania Trump. Urgent." Sarah's heart raced. Could this be real? She clicked on the email, her hand trembling as she read. The former First Lady wanted to donate a priceless family heirloom to their small local charity. Sarah's mind flashed to the recent struggles, dwindling donations, increasing community need. She dialed the number provided, each ring lasting an eternity. A voice confirmed the unbelievable news. Sarah's legs weakened as she hung up, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just happened. "Everyone gather around," Sarah called, her voice cracking. The staff and volunteers formed a circle, curiosity etched on their faces. Sarah took a deep breath, searching for words to explain the incredible turn of events. "Melania Trump is donating a priceless family heirloom to our charity." The room erupted into gasps and questions. As Sarah shared details, excitement filled the air. Volunteers who had worked tirelessly for months felt a renewed sense of hope. The next hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Forms were filled, security measures discussed, and plans made for the necklace's arrival. Through it all, Sarah sensed something extraordinary was about to unfold. Word spread, drawing curious onlookers outside the charity's modest storefront. Some were skeptical, others excited, but all were drawn by the promise of something remarkable. The neighborhood buzzed with anticipation, as if sensing an impending transformation that would change countless lives. The antique shop on the corner of 5th and Main was a world unto itself, a refuge from the ceaseless din of New York City. John Hargrove, the shop's owner and resident appraiser, moved through the narrow aisles with practiced ease. His fingers trailed over ornate picture frames and delicate porcelain figurines as he prepared for what he assumed would be another ordinary day. The morning light filtered through dusty windows, casting a warm glow on the treasures within. John's mind wandered to the day ahead. A few regular customers might drop by, perhaps a tourist or two looking for a slice of old New York. He never imagined that by noon, his world would be turned upside down. The phone's shrill ring cut through the quiet. John answered with his usual calm demeanor, but the voice on the other end held an urgency that made him sit up straighter. It was Sarah from Hope's Haven, a local charity he'd helped out a few times before. Her words tumbled out in a rush of excitement and disbelief. "John, we need your expertise. Immediately. We've received a donation from Melania Trump. It's a necklace, and we think it might be valuable. Can you come take a look?" John's eyebrows shot up. He'd heard rumors of the former First Lady's donation, but he'd dismissed them as just another bit of city gossip. Now, faced with the possibility of examining such a piece, his professional curiosity was piqued. "Of course, Sarah. I'll be there in 20 minutes." The short drive to Hope's Haven was a blur of anticipation. John's mind raced with possibilities. What kind of necklace would a woman like Melania Trump donate? He'd seen his fair share of celebrity cast-offs over the years, often more flash than substance. But something in Sarah's voice told him this was different. Hope's Haven was abuzz with activity when John arrived. He navigated through a small crowd of volunteers and curious onlookers, all whispering excitedly about the mysterious donation. Sarah met him at the door, her eyes bright with a mix of hope and apprehension. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said, leading him to a small back office. "It's in here." On the desk lay a simple wooden box, incongruous with the excitement surrounding it. John approached it with the reverence he reserved for potentially significant finds. As he opened the lid, the room seemed to hold its breath. The necklace lay nestled on faded velvet, and John's trained eye immediately recognized its quality. The gold filigree work was exquisite, clearly the product of master craftsmanship. Sapphires, emeralds, and diamonds caught the light, their brilliance undimmed by time. John's initial skepticism faded as he examined the piece more closely. His fingers, practiced in the delicate art of appraisal, traced the intricate patterns. There was something familiar about the design, something that tugged at the edges of his memory. He reached for his loupe, a jeweler's magnifying glass, and bent closer. Under magnification, the true artistry of the piece revealed itself. The setting of each stone was perfect, the goldwork flawless. But it was a small detail, almost hidden beneath one of the larger sapphires, that made his breath catch. There, etched into the gold, was a tiny mark. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like a simple scratch, but John recognized it immediately. It was a maker's mark, one he'd seen only a handful of times in his long career. His mind raced, connecting historical dots he never thought he'd see outside of a museum. This necklace wasn't just valuable, it was a piece of history. The mark belonged to a renowned 19th century jeweler known for creating pieces for European royalty and American industrialists alike. John's hands trembled slightly as the full significance of the necklace dawned on him. This wasn't just a beautiful piece of jewelry, it was a tangible link to a pivotal time in American history. The necklace likely predated the Trump family's ownership, passing through the hands of some of the most influential figures of the Gilded Age. As he carefully examined each stone, each delicate curve of gold, John's excitement grew. The craftsmanship was impeccable, but it was the history behind the piece that truly set it apart. He could almost see the glittering ballrooms where it had been worn, the deals made and broken in its presence, the secrets it had witnessed. Sarah watched him work, her curiosity growing with each passing moment. "Well?" she finally asked, unable to contain herself any longer. "Is it valuable?" John looked up, his eyes shining with the thrill of discovery. He opened his mouth to speak, then hesitated. The true value of the necklace was far beyond what he'd initially imagined. It wasn't just the monetary worth, which was substantial, but the historical significance that made it priceless. He debated internally. Should he reveal the full truth, or keep it understated? The responsibility weighed heavily on him. This information could change everything for Hope's Haven, but it could also bring complications. Media attention, security concerns, the pressure of handling such a valuable artifact. Was the small charity ready for all that? As he looked at Sarah's hopeful face, John made his decision. They deserved to know the truth, to understand the full impact of the gift they'd been given. "Sarah," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully, "this necklace is extraordinary. It's not just valuable in terms of its materials, though those alone are worth a small fortune. What you have here is a piece of American history." He went on to explain the significance of the maker's mark, the likely provenance of the piece, and its potential value both monetarily and historically. As he spoke, Sarah's eyes widened, and her hand flew to her mouth in shock. "But how?" she whispered. "How did Melania Trump end up with something like this?" John shook his head. "That's a mystery I can't solve. But whatever path this necklace took to get here, it's clear that its journey isn't over. This donation, it's going to change lives." As the full impact of his words sank in, the air in the small office seemed to shift. The potential of what this meant for Hope's Haven, for the people they helped, was almost overwhelming. John could see the wheels turning in Sarah's mind, the possibilities unfolding before her. He carefully placed the necklace back in its box, his movements reverent. "You'll need to decide how to proceed," he said gently. "This isn't just a donation anymore. It's a responsibility." Sarah nodded, her expression a mix of excitement and trepidation. "What do you think we should do?" John considered for a moment. "First, we need to ensure its safety. Then, I'd recommend getting in touch with some museums or historical societies. They might be able to provide more information about its history. And Sarah," he added, his voice serious, "be prepared. Once word gets out about what this really is, things are going to change. Fast." As if on cue, they heard a commotion from the main room of the charity. Voices raised in excitement, the unmistakable sound of camera shutters clicking. It seemed the news was already spreading. Sarah took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "I guess there's no going back now," she said, a nervous smile playing at her lips. John placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "No, there isn't. But sometimes the most unexpected gifts bring the greatest opportunities. This necklace, it's more than just jewelry. It's a catalyst for change." As they prepared to face the growing crowd outside, John couldn't help but marvel at the twists of fate that had brought this historical treasure to a small charity in New York City. From the hands of the wealthy and powerful to those working tirelessly to help others, the necklace's journey was far from over. He watched as Sarah straightened her posture, took a deep breath, and reached for the door handle. In that moment, he saw the strength that had kept Hope's Haven going through tough times, the determination that would now guide them through this unexpected windfall. The necklace, safely tucked away in its unassuming box, seemed to pulse with potential. Its true value lay not just in its gems and gold, but in the hope it represented, the lives it would change, and the stories yet to be told. As Sarah opened the door, facing the flash of cameras and the barrage of questions, John knew that the ripples from this discovery would spread far beyond the walls of Hope's Haven. The necklace, with its hidden history and unexpected journey, was about to weave itself into the fabric of the city in ways no one could have anticipated. The newsroom of the New York Daily Chronicle buzzed with energy, a hive of journalists chasing leads and editors barking deadlines. In the midst of this organized chaos, Emma Reeves sat at her cramped desk, her fingers flying over her keyboard as she finished a piece on local traffic patterns. At 26, she was the youngest reporter on staff, still struggling to prove herself in a cutthroat industry. As she hit send on her article, a snippet of conversation caught her ear. Two senior reporters huddled near the water cooler, their voices low but excited. Emma strained to listen, her heart quickening as she caught the words Melania Trump and Priceless donation. Her mind raced. This could be it, the big break she'd been waiting for. Emma had spent the last 3 years covering mundane local stories, dreaming of the day she'd land a headline-worthy scoop. She glanced at the clock, 4:45 p.m. If she wanted to pitch this story, she'd have to move fast. Taking a deep breath, Emma stood up and made her way to her editor's office. Frank Russo was a hard-nosed veteran of print journalism, known for his skepticism and demanding standards. As she approached his door, Emma felt her confidence waver. What if he dismissed her idea? What if she was setting herself up for another disappointment? She knocked on the doorframe, her heart pounding. Frank looked up from his computer, his reading glasses perched low on his nose. "What is it, Reeves?" "I'm on deadline here." Emma stepped into the office, her back straight and her voice steadier than she felt. "Sir, I've got a lead on a potentially big story. It's about Melania Trump making a significant donation to a local charity." Frank's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained skeptical. "And where did you hear this? Twitter rumors don't count as leads, Reeves." Emma felt a flash of frustration. She'd worked hard to build a network of reliable sources, but Frank still treated her like a rookie. "No, sir. I overheard Johnson and Martinez discussing it. They mentioned something about a priceless heirloom." Frank leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "Johnson and Martinez, huh? They're usually on top of these things. But why would the former First Lady donate to some small-time charity? It doesn't add up. Emma saw her chance slipping away. She thought quickly, drawing on every ounce of her journalistic instinct. That's exactly why this could be huge, sir. It's unexpected. There's got to be a story behind it. And if we break it first, we could scoop every major outlet in the city. The newsroom around them faded away as Emma held her breath, watching Frank's face for any sign of interest. She could almost see the gears turning in his mind, weighing the potential risks and rewards. After what felt like an eternity, Frank leaned forward, his elbows on his desk. All right, Reeves, you've got 2 hours. Get me something solid. A confirmation from the charity, details on the donation, anything that proves this isn't just gossip. If you come back empty-handed, you're back on traffic reports for a month. Understood? Emma nodded, a mix of excitement and terror coursing through her veins. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. As she turned to leave, Frank called out, And Reeves, don't make me regret this. Emma hurried back to her desk, her mind already racing with potential leads. She knew the clock was ticking, but for the first time in years, she felt the thrill of a real story within her grasp. As she grabbed her coat and notepad, the bustling newsroom around her seemed to fade away. There was only one thing that mattered now, finding the truth behind Melania Trump's mysterious donation. She rushed out of the building, the cool evening air hitting her face as she stepped onto the busy New York street. Emma's first stop was Hope's Haven, the charity mentioned in the whispers she'd overheard. As she hailed a cab, she couldn't shake the feeling that this story was bigger than she realized. What had prompted Melania Trump to make such a donation? And why this particular charity? The taxi weaved through the crowded streets, and Emma used the time to make some calls. She reached out to her network of sources, hoping someone could provide a lead or a confirmation. Most calls led to dead ends, but a city hall clerk mentioned hearing rumors of unusual activity around Hope's Haven. As the cab pulled up to the charity's address, Emma's jaw dropped. A small crowd had gathered outside the modest building, and she could see camera flashes through the windows. Her heart sank. Had she already missed the story? Determined, Emma pushed her way through the crowd, flashing her press badge. She caught snippets of excited conversations, something about a necklace, a fortune in jewels, a piece of history. Each word made her more certain. This was no ordinary donation. At the charity's door, she was stopped by a flustered volunteer. I'm sorry, we're not giving any statements right now. Please, you'll have to wait for the press conference. Emma's mind raced. She couldn't wait for a press conference. She needed something now. Looking past the volunteer, she spotted a familiar face. John Hargrove, the well-known antique appraiser. What was he doing here? In a split-second decision, Emma ducked under the volunteer's arm and darted inside. The interior of Hope's Haven was a whirlwind of activity. Volunteers huddled in excited groups, phones rang incessantly, and in the center of it all stood a woman Emma recognized as Sarah Matthews, the charity's director. Sarah looked overwhelmed, her eyes wide as she tried to manage the chaos around her. Emma approached cautiously, her reporter's instinct telling her that this was the key to the whole story. Miss Matthews? I'm Emma Reeves from the New York Daily Chronicle. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions about the donation you've received. Sarah turned to Emma, a mix of excitement and apprehension on her face. I'm not sure what I can say. It's all happened so fast. We never expected anything like this. Emma sensed Sarah's hesitation and softened her approach. I understand this must be overwhelming, but people are going to be curious. Wouldn't you rather have the real story out there, instead of rumors and speculation? Sarah seemed to consider this for a moment. She glanced at John Hargrove, who gave a subtle nod. All right, Sarah said, taking a deep breath. But not here. Let's go to my office. As Emma followed Sarah through the bustling charity, her mind was already composing the opening lines of her article. She knew she was on the verge of something big, a story that could change not just her career, but the lives of everyone involved. In Sarah's small, cluttered office, Emma listened intently as the charity director recounted the events of the day. The arrival of the mysterious package, the shock of discovering its contents, the mind-boggling appraisal from John Hargrove. With each detail, Emma's excitement grew. This wasn't just a simple donation story. It was a tale of hidden history, unexpected generosity, and lives on the brink of transformation. So, this necklace, Emma pressed, her pen flying across her notepad. It's not just valuable because of the gems and gold. Sarah shook her head, her eyes wide with wonder. No, it's so much more than that. John says it's a piece of American history. The maker's mark, the craftsmanship. It's like something out of a museum. Emma's mind raced with the implications. And Melania Trump just gave it away? Do you know why she chose Hope's Haven? A small smile played at Sarah's lips. That's the most amazing part. The letter that came with the donation, it talked about the importance of giving back, of using privilege to make a real difference. She said she wanted the necklace to go somewhere it could do the most good. As Sarah continued to share details, Emma felt a surge of emotion. This wasn't just a headline. It was a story of hope, of unexpected kindness, of the power of a single act to spark change. She thought of all the lives that could be touched by this donation, of the ripple effects that would spread out from this small charity into the wider world. When Sarah finished speaking, Emma sat back, her notepad full and her mind whirling. She had her story, and it was bigger than she could have imagined. But as she prepared to leave, a nagging question tugged at her. "Miss Matthews," she said, her voice soft, "may I see the necklace?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She opened a drawer in her desk and carefully removed a simple wooden box. As she lifted the lid, Emma leaned forward, her breath catching in her throat. The necklace lay nestled on faded velvet, its gems catching the light from the office's small window. It was more beautiful than Emma had imagined, a delicate web of gold filigree studded with sapphires, emeralds, and diamonds. But as she looked closer, she saw what John Hargrove had seen, the exquisite craftsmanship, the tiny maker's mark that spoke of its historical significance. In that moment, looking at this small object that had set so much in motion, Emma felt the weight of the story she was about to tell. It wasn't just about a valuable piece of jewelry or a celebrity's generous act. It was about the interconnectedness of human lives, the power of compassion to create change, and the unexpected ways that history could reach out and touch the present. As she left Hope's Haven, the street outside still buzzing with activity, Emma's mind was already composing the opening lines of her article. She knew she had something special, a story that could captivate the city and beyond. But more than that, she felt a sense of responsibility. This wasn't just her big break. It was a chance to shine a light on the work of people like Sarah, to inspire others to acts of kindness, to show how a single decision could set off a chain reaction of positive change. Emma hurried back to the newsroom, her heart pounding with excitement and nerves. She had just over an hour left before Frank's deadline. As she sat down at her computer, her fingers flying over the keys, she felt a surge of gratitude for the whispered conversation she'd overheard, for Frank's grudging faith in her, for Sarah's willingness to share the story. The newsroom hummed around her, but Emma was lost in her work, weaving together the threads of this extraordinary tale. She wrote of Melania Trump's unexpected act of generosity, of the necklace's journey from a dusty attic to the heart of a struggling charity. She described John Hargrove's shocking discovery, the historical significance that made the donation so much more than a financial windfall. But more than that, Emma wrote about hope, about the power of kindness to create ripples of change, about the interconnectedness of human lives and the unexpected ways that history could reach out and touch the present. She wrote about Sarah and the volunteers at Hope's Haven, their tireless work given new fuel by this extraordinary gift. As she typed the final words, Emma felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she'd experienced in her career. This wasn't just a news story. It was a testament to the enduring power of generosity and the unexpected ways that lives could intersect and change each other. With trembling fingers, Emma hit send on her article, just as the clock struck 7. She leaned back in her chair, exhausted but exhilarated. Whatever happened next, she knew she'd given it her all. Moments later, Frank's gruff voice called out across the newsroom. "Reeves, my office now." Emma's heart pounded as she made her way to the editor's office. Frank sat behind his desk, his eyes scanning his computer screen. Emma held her breath, waiting for his verdict. Finally, Frank looked up, his expression unreadable. "Reeves," he said slowly, this is good work, really good work." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you, sir," she managed to say. Frank nodded, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "We're running it. Front page, tomorrow's edition. You've got yourself a real story here, kid." As Emma left Frank's office, her legs shaky with relief and excitement, she couldn't help but think about the necklace that had started it all. From Melania Trump's attic to Hope's Haven, from Sarah's overwhelmed excitement to John Hargrove's historical revelation, it had woven a thread that connected them all. And now, through Emma's words, that story would reach thousands more. She hoped her article would do justice to the generosity, the history, and the hope embodied in that glittering piece of jewelry. As she gathered her things to head home, Emma felt a sense of purpose she'd never experienced before. This was why she'd become a journalist, to tell stories that mattered, stories that could change lives. The early morning sun painted the city in hues of gold and amber as Emma stepped out of her apartment building. Her article had hit the newsstands just hours ago, and already the air buzzed with an energy she'd never felt before. As she walked down the bustling sidewalk, her eyes caught sight of her own words splashed across the front page of the New York Daily Chronicle, held in the hands of commuters and peeking out from newspaper boxes on every corner. Emma's heart raced as she overheard snippets of conversations, people discussing the very story she'd poured her heart into. Did you hear about Melania Trump's donation? A priceless necklace? To a small charity? The excitement in their voices mirrored the thrill that coursed through her veins. She'd done it. She'd not only broken a major story, but had touched people's hearts in the process. As she turned the corner towards her favorite coffee shop, Emma's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket. She pulled it out to find a flurry of notifications, emails from colleagues, messages from friends, and even a few interview requests from other news outlets. The story was spreading like wildfire, and Emma found herself at the center of a media storm she'd never imagined. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door to the coffee shop. The familiar scent of freshly ground beans and warm pastries enveloped her, a comforting contrast to the whirlwind of emotions she was experiencing. As she waited in line, her eyes fell on a small TV mounted in the corner. The morning news was on, and to her astonishment, they were discussing her article. In an unexpected turn of events, former First Lady Melania Trump has donated a priceless family heirloom to a local New York charity, the anchor reported. The story, first broken by the New York Daily Chronicle, has sparked a wave of discussion about philanthropy and the impact of high-profile donations. Emma's name flashed across the screen, and she felt a surge of pride mixed with disbelief. She'd dreamed of this moment for years, but the reality of it was almost overwhelming. As she collected her coffee, the barista gave her a knowing smile. "Aren't you the reporter who wrote that story?" he asked. Emma nodded, a shy smile playing at her lips. "It's amazing what you've done," he continued. "People have been talking about it all morning. It's making everyone think about what they can do to help others." As Emma left the coffee shop, she noticed something different in the air. People seemed to be walking with a little more purpose, their eyes a little brighter. She overheard a woman telling her friend about a local food drive she was planning to volunteer for, inspired by the story of Hope's Haven. A businessman on his phone was discussing setting up a charitable foundation with his company. The ripples of change were already visible, spreading out from the epicenter of Melania's donation and Emma's article. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Sarah at Hope's Haven. "Emma, you won't believe what's happening. We've been flooded with calls and emails since your article came out. People want to help, to donate, to volunteer. It's incredible. Can you come by the office later? There's something I need to show you." Intrigued, Emma replied that she'd be there in an hour. As she made her way towards Hope's Haven, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger than she'd anticipated. The story she'd written wasn't just news, it was a catalyst for change, a spark that was igniting a fire of generosity and community spirit across the city. When Emma arrived at Hope's Haven, she was met with a scene of controlled chaos. The small office was bustling with activity, volunteers answering phones and sorting through piles of donated goods. Sarah greeted her with a weary but ecstatic smile, dark circles under her eyes testament to a sleepless night. "Emma, thank goodness you're here," Sarah said, pulling her into a quick hug. "I don't know how to thank you. Your article, it's changed everything." Sarah led Emma through the crowded office, explaining as they went. "Since your story broke, we've received over 1,000 calls. People wanting to donate, to volunteer, to help in any way they can. We've had offers from local businesses to sponsor our programs, and even a few celebrities have reached out about getting involved." Emma's eyes widened as she took in the transformation. Just yesterday, this had been a struggling charity on the brink of closure. Now, it was a hive of activity, hope palpable in the air. "But that's not even the biggest news," Sarah continued, lowering her voice. "We've been contacted by the mayor's office. They want to hold a town hall meeting to discuss the impact of the donation and how we can use this momentum to address some of the city's most pressing issues." Emma felt a flutter of excitement in her chest. This was bigger than she'd imagined. Her story hadn't just shed light on a single act of generosity, it had sparked a citywide conversation about giving, about community, about the power of individuals to make a difference. As they made their way to Sarah's office, Emma noticed John Hargrove, the antique appraiser, deep in conversation with a group of people she didn't recognize. He caught her eye and gave her a nod of appreciation. It seemed everyone involved in the story was feeling the weight of its impact. Sarah closed the door behind them, offering Emma a moment of quiet in the midst of the whirlwind. Emma, I want you to know how grateful we are. Your article, it didn't just tell our story. It made people feel something. It made them want to act. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. This was why she'd become a journalist, to make a difference, to tell stories that mattered. But she'd never imagined the impact could be so immediate, so tangible. I'm just glad I could help, Emma said softly. But Sarah, what happens now? How do you handle all of this attention, all of these offers? Sarah sank into her chair, running a hand through her disheveled hair. Honestly, I'm not sure. It's overwhelming, but in the best possible way. We have an opportunity here to do so much good, to help so many people. But we need to be smart about it, strategic. As they discussed the challenges and opportunities ahead, Emma's journalistic instincts kicked in. There was another story here, one that went beyond the initial donation. It was a story about community, about the ripple effects of kindness, about how a single act could spark a movement. Sarah, Emma said, an idea forming in her mind. What if we documented this? The town hall meeting, the community's response, the changes you're able to make because of all this support. It could inspire other communities, show people what's possible when we come together. Sarah's eyes lit up. That's brilliant, Emma. It could keep the momentum going, encourage even more people to get involved. As they continued to talk, mapping out possibilities and dreaming big, Emma felt a sense of purpose unlike anything she'd experienced before. She'd set out to write a news story, but she'd ended up being part of something much larger. The necklace that Melania Trump had donated wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of the transformative power of generosity, a catalyst for change that was reshaping their community. The day of the town hall meeting arrived, and the air in the community center crackled with anticipation. Emma arrived early, notebook in hand, ready to capture every moment of this historic gathering. The large auditorium, usually reserved for school plays and local concerts, was filled to capacity. People from all walks of life sat shoulder to shoulder, their excited chatter creating a buzz that filled the room. Emma scanned the crowd, recognizing faces from her reporting over the past few days. There was Mrs. Rodriguez, owner of the local bakery, who had pledged to donate a portion of her profits to Hope's Haven. Next to her sat Tom, a former client of the charity who was now volunteering his time as a mentor to at-risk youth. In the front row, John Hargrove sat with a group of local historians, their heads bent in deep discussion. As the clock struck 7, the mayor stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the stage. Good evening, everyone, the mayor began, his voice carrying across the packed auditorium. We've gathered here tonight to discuss something extraordinary that's happened in our community. By now, I'm sure you've all heard about the generous donation made by former First Lady Melania Trump to our local charity, Hope's Haven. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Emma saw heads nodding, people leaning in to catch every word. But what we're here to talk about tonight goes beyond a single act of generosity, no matter how significant, the mayor continued. We're here to talk about the incredible response from our community and how we can harness this energy to create lasting change. As the mayor spoke, Emma could feel the energy in the room shift. There was an electricity in the air, a sense of possibility that seemed to touch everyone present. She scribbled furiously in her notebook, trying to capture not just the words, but the feeling, the almost tangible sense of hope that filled the space. The mayor went on to outline the outpouring of support that Hope's Haven had received since the story broke. Donations had poured in, not just of money, but of time, skills, and resources. Local businesses had stepped up, offering job training programs and employment opportunities for the charity's clients. Schools were organizing fundraisers and awareness campaigns. It seemed that every sector of the community had been touched by the story and inspired to act. But, as the floor opened for questions and comments, it became clear that not everyone was convinced. A man in the back stood up, his voice carrying a note of skepticism. "This is all well and good," he said, "but how do we know this isn't just a temporary feel-good moment? What happens when the media attention dies down and we're left with the same problems we've always had. A murmur of agreement rippled through parts of the crowd. Emma saw Sarah sitting in the front row, tense visibly. This was the moment of truth, the challenge they'd been anticipating. But before the mayor could respond, another voice spoke up. It was Tom, the former Hope's Haven client. He stood, his voice shaky but determined. "I understand your concern," he said, addressing the skeptical man directly. "A year ago, I might have said the same thing. I was homeless, hopeless, and convinced that nothing could change. But Hope's Haven gave me a chance when no one else would. They didn't just give me a meal or a bed for the night. They gave me the tools and support I needed to rebuild my life." The room fell silent as Tom spoke, his words carrying the weight of lived experience. "This donation and all the support that's followed, it's not just about money," he continued. "It's about showing people like me that we matter, that our community cares. And let me tell you, when you feel that kind of support, it changes everything. It gives you the strength to keep going, to believe in yourself again." As Tom sat down, a ripple of applause spread through the room. Emma saw tears in the eyes of those around her, saw heads nodding in understanding and agreement. The mood in the room had shifted once again, skepticism giving way to a renewed sense of purpose. Sarah stood up next, her voice steady and clear as she addressed the crowd. "What we've seen over the past few days is just the beginning," she said. "Yes, the donation from Mrs. Trump was incredible, and we're beyond grateful. But what's truly amazing is how our community has responded. You've shown us that when we come together, when we believe in each other, there's no limit to what we can achieve." She went on to outline Hope's Haven's plans for the future: expanded job training programs, a new shelter for families, partnerships with local schools to provide support for at-risk youth. But more than that, she spoke of a vision for a community where no one was left behind, where everyone had the opportunity to thrive. As Sarah spoke, Emma looked around the room. She saw people leaning forward in their seats, saw nods of agreement and looks of determination. The skepticism from earlier had been replaced by a palpable sense of excitement and possibility. The meeting continued late into the night, with community members stepping up to share ideas, offer support, and commit to action. Emma's hand cramped from taking notes, but she couldn't stop writing. She knew she was witnessing something special, a moment of transformation that would ripple out far beyond this single meeting. As the town hall drew to a close, the mayor stepped back up to the podium. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," he said. "What we've seen here is the true spirit of our community. We've been given an incredible opportunity, and together, we're going to make the most of it." The crowd rose to their feet, applauding not just the mayor's words, but the sense of unity and purpose that filled the room. As people began to file out, Emma overheard snippets of excited conversation, saw people exchanging contact information, making plans to volunteer and get involved. She caught sight of Sarah, surrounded by a group of community members eager to offer their support. Their eyes met across the room, and Sarah gave her a smile and a nod of gratitude. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. Her story had been the spark. But this outpouring of community spirit and dedication, was something bigger than she could have ever imagined. As Emma left the community center, stepping out into the cool night air, she felt a sense of awe at what she'd witnessed. The story of Melania Trump's necklace had started as a simple act of generosity, but it had grown into something so much more. It had become a catalyst for change, a reminder of the power of community and the impact that a single act of kindness could have. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying over the keys as she began to compose the opening lines of her next article. This wasn't just a follow-up story. It was the beginning of a new chapter for their community, and Emma knew that she would be there to document every step of the journey, to share the stories of hope and transformation that were unfolding around her. As she walked home, the city seemed different somehow. The streets were the same, the buildings unchanged, but there was a new energy in the air, a sense of possibility that hadn't been there before. Emma smiled to herself, feeling grateful to be a part of it all. She had set out to write a news story, but she had ended up being part of something much bigger, a movement of kindness and community spirit that was reshaping their world, one act of generosity at a time. The city hummed with an energy that seemed to crackle in the air, invisible yet palpable. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the bustling streets, a series of seemingly unconnected scenes unfolded across town. On a quiet street corner, a young woman named Sarah stood hesitantly outside a local clinic. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a crumpled newspaper article about Melania Trump's donation. The story of Hope's Haven and the community's response had been playing on her mind for days. Sarah had been struggling with addiction for years, but something about this act of kindness had stirred a long dormant hope within her. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and pushed open the clinic door. For the first time in years, she felt ready to ask for help. Across town, in a sleek high-rise office, businessman Robert Caldwell leaned back in his leather chair, lost in thought. The framed photo of his family on his desk seemed to watch him, a silent reminder of the legacy he wanted to leave behind. The news of Melania Trump's donation and its ripple effect through the community had shaken his long-held beliefs about charitable giving. He'd always seen it as a tax write-off, nothing more. But now, he found himself wondering if there was more to it. With a decisive nod, he reached for his phone to call his accountant. It was time to reassess his approach to philanthropy. In a bustling classroom, Miss Thompson cleared her throat, capturing the attention of her restless students. The recent events in their town had inspired her to introduce a new lesson on community service. As she looked out at the sea of young faces, she saw curiosity, skepticism, and excitement. Today, she began, we're going to talk about how one small act can change the world. The room fell silent, all eyes fixed on her. She smiled, knowing that seeds of compassion and civic responsibility were about to be planted. Meanwhile, John Hargrove, the antique appraiser who had first recognized the true value of Melania's necklace, sat in his cluttered office surrounded by books and artifacts. The events of the past weeks had awakened something in him, a desire to do more. He'd spent his career assessing the monetary value of historical objects, but now he saw an opportunity to preserve history in a more meaningful way. With determined focus, he began drafting a proposal for a fund dedicated to historical preservation and education. As the night deepened, these individual moments of reflection and decision rippled out into the community. Each person touched by the story of the donation found themselves at a crossroads, facing choices that would shape not only their own lives but the fabric of the town itself. As dawn broke over the city, a gentle breeze carried whispers of change through the streets. The air was thick with possibility, as if the world held its breath, waiting to see what this new day would bring. In her study, Melania Trump sat surrounded by newspaper clippings, each one a testament to the unexpected ripple effects of her decision to donate a family heirloom. Her fingers traced the headlines, eyes scanning the stories of lives transformed. The necklace, once a beautiful but forgotten piece tucked away in her attic, had become a catalyst for something far greater than she could have imagined. Melania's chest tightened as she read about Sarah, a young woman who had found the courage to seek help for her addiction after hearing about the donation, the businessman who had reevaluated his entire approach to philanthropy, the teacher inspiring a new generation to think beyond themselves. Memories flooded back as Melania closed her eyes, remembering the weight of the necklace in her hands that day in the attic. She had hesitated then, torn between keeping a family treasure and the nagging feeling that it could do more good elsewhere. Now, as she looked at the faces smiling back at her from the newspaper pages, she felt a warmth spread through her chest. The true value of the necklace, she realized, had never been in its gems or gold, but in its power to ignite hope. A letter from Hope's Haven lay open on her desk, filled with heartfelt thanks and stories of lives changed. Melania picked it up, her eyes misting as she reread the words. The public perception of her had shifted, she knew. Where once there had been skepticism and judgment, now there was a growing understanding. She wasn't just a former first lady or a celebrity. She was someone who had chosen to make a difference. As the morning light spilled across her desk, Melania found herself contemplating the nature of possessions and their potential impact. The necklace had been beautiful, yes, but locked away in her attic. It had been nothing more than a pretty trinket. In the hands of Hope's Haven, it had become a beacon of possibility, a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could spark a revolution of compassion. Melania stood, stretching as she walked to the window. The city spread out before her, teeming with life and untold stories. She thought of all the people out there, each carrying their own hidden treasures, their own potential to create change. What if, she wondered, everyone looked at what they had and asked themselves not, what is this worth to me? But, what could this mean to someone else? With a deep breath, Melania turned back to her desk. She pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, her mind already racing with ideas for her next act of giving. The necklace had been just the beginning, she realized. There was so much more she could do, so many more lives she could touch. As she began to write, Melania felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had let go of a family heirloom, yes, but in return she had gained something far more precious: the knowledge that one small act of generosity could set in motion a tidal wave of kindness that could reshape an entire community. The necklace that once lay forgotten in Melania Trump's attic now shimmered with newfound purpose, its brilliance not in its gems, but in the lives it had touched. A community once divided now stood united, inspired by a single act of generosity. The story of Hope's Haven and its unexpected windfall had become a beacon, illuminating the power of compassion in a world often shrouded in cynicism. As the sun set on another day in the city, the air hummed with possibility. People walked the streets with a renewed sense of purpose, their eyes open to the potential for change that lay within their own hands. The question lingered in the minds of many: what forgotten treasure in their own lives could spark a revolution of kindness?